JSB Talks Digital.
Hello and welcome to JSB Talks Digital, the podcast for marketers, digital transformation champions, and those of you bringing your skills into the digital age. I'm Joanne Sweeney-Burke, and this podcast is brought to you by Digital Training Institute. In this episode, I'll explain why niche works in building your online business. Coming up in today's show, in social media news, the Twitter hashtag celebrates its 10th birthday. Social media management tool Agorapulse gets a revamp. And Facebook and Instagram go down and the social media world weeps. I interview radio presenter, podcaster and online entrepreneur Marian O'Flaherty. In Shoutouts, 3 niche case studies we can all learn from. Ask JSB, in JSB's column, My Digital Transformation into the Niche Area of Public Sector. And find out what social media tool saved my working week.
Social media news.
Do you remember life without the hashtag? Well, maybe not, because the dear old hashtag turned 10 this week. Born on Twitter, the now powerful symbol has transformed communications as we know it. Media outlets, social influencers, commentators, and even TV show hosts covered the story and marketers joined in. On August 23rd, 2007, Chris Messina sent a tweet asking his followers what they thought about adding the pound sign in front of Barcamp, a topical technology event. A decade later, an average of 125 million hashtags are shared every day around the world on Twitter. As you know, hashtags allow us to filter conversations that are meaningful to us, from sporting events to breaking news, business conferences, political discussions, and so much more. The hashtag helps to silence the noise of the social web that we have no interest in. It also serves to bind like-minded people together and create unique communities the world over, but not separated by geography. For example, hashtag Black Lives Matter. Praise to Mr. Messina and praise the hashtag. Don't forget to use hashtag JSB Talks Digital if you're engaging with me on Twitter, or you can search for it to join in my digital conversations. I use Agorapulse as my social media management tool of choice. Big news this week with the reveal of their platform's new layout and functionality. Writing on his blog, CEO Aymeric Ernaud said the revamp was long awaited and overdue, and he thanked his customers for their patience and ongoing support. The current version of Agorapulse was released in November 2013. Aymeric says, as you can imagine, with a 4-year-old software as a service product in a fast-moving industry, the back end needed a revamp to help us move faster. The user interface was in need of a serious makeover also. He even admitted to answering customer queries at midnight from his home in France. So, here are just some of the updates. A new inbox, new filters for more granularity, you can now save replies, better emojis, a translation feature, always-on user profile, real-time team activity visibility, new reports, a new content report, new PowerPoint design, and you also have the ability to repeat scheduled content, and finally, a brand new queue system with advanced evergreen content re-queuing. Read more about the full Agorapulse update on their blog at agorapulse.com/blog. Facebook and Instagram crashed this week with peeps in Europe, the US, Brazil, Japan and Australia weeping into their smartphones and desktops. Now, as I was enjoying a family trip to Venice, I had no such stress. However, Down Detector, a website that tracks internet outages, reported a large spike in users being unable to access Facebook at about 2:15 p.m. on the 26th of August, with some users of Instagram also experiencing difficulties. It seems, however, the technical problem was resolved for many users shortly before 3:30 p.m. According to media reports, at its peak, the social network was receiving 1,869 reports of outages. Did you suffer the Facebook or Instagram downtime? Did you weep, worry, or feel weird? I'd love to know more. Send me your story on Instagram to JSB Grams.
Interview.
In today's show, I'm delighted to be joined from Kerry by radio presenter, podcaster, and online entrepreneur Marian O'Flaherty. Marian, you're very welcome to JSB Talks Digital.
Thanks, Joanne. Thanks for having me on.
So today we're going to talk about how going niche online is the best strategy. But first of all, tell my listeners about your own broadcasting, podcasting, and online career.
After I got out of college in the mid-2000s, obviously the economy took a bit of a nosedive, and I was working in traditional journalism at that point. I was working in the print media, but around 2008, 2009, I started to see how really online was overtaking print with regards to the growth of Facebook and then also the introduction of Twitter, sites like Tumblr, etc., etc. So around that time, I started to devise my own blog. It was really a graveyard for stories that didn't make it into the paper. And I soon found that the stories I was putting up, the blogging I was doing, was getting huge traffic, especially from overseas. And suddenly it clicked that, Irish people emigrate and they want to keep in touch with what's going on at home. And this very niche blog, which is basically dealing with the Dingle Peninsula, suddenly had all these followers and all these readers. So I decided then to devise a proper news site. I was probably a couple of years ahead of the curve, but it just gained a lot of traffic online, and all of a sudden there was a business out of nothing.
So, like myself, you have a very similar background, journalism and bringing those storytelling techniques and skills into the digital age. But do you actually think that traditional media and new media are different, or are they very similar?
They're similar because they're storytelling. I guess it's how you do the storytelling. You have to be more concise online and you have to be more direct, because when people consume journalism online, they consume it quicker. And because journalism is moving at such a fast pace, it's not like in local media where a newspaper would traditionally maybe come out once a week. My whole thing when I started my website, which was dinglenewscom, was that I would post on a daily, if not bi-daily or 3 times daily basis. And in that capacity, people would keep coming back, and people knew that the stories were going to be there for them on a daily basis, and they didn't have to wait a week to open up the newspaper. Now, obviously, newspapers and blogs and online media are coming closer together in that, and they're doing a better job in marrying the two together. But certainly from where I started in print, I could just see how online media was overtaking it at such a rate because people just wanted to consume things quicker.
So staying with the topic of niche, and you decided to go with dinglenewscom, not Kerry News, not Munster News. Tell me about why you made that decision.
Well, I'm from the area, and prior to that, I had been in college. I'd been in the United States, and around that time, I found myself at home again. And the area that I'm from is very well known globally, and I soon found from a quick online search that if you type in Dingle, it's a keyword in itself, and it attaches itself to so many other aspects. I also found that not only were people from the area here wanting to know about what was going on, that people who had left the area over the decades wanted to know what was going on, but then also all of the people that travel here and that come here as tourists wanted to know what was going on as well. Funnily enough, my biggest Irish readership of that website was in Dublin. That was my biggest readership, and because people would come here on the weekend or whatever, and I just soon found, instead of competing with, we'll say, the bigger titles, like the Kerry Man or like Kerry's Eye, which had websites at the time, that my best bet was to go niche, because that's what people wanted. That was the feedback I was getting. That's what was working with the keywords online from Google Analytics. I could see that it was working. And I also expanded it then into the Irish language sphere, which gave it another unique and niche aspect, because it's a Gaeltacht area with Irish speaking, which also attracted its own following. So it was all those niche aspects that was able to take a very local thing out of its, we'll say, geographical constraints and into a more national or even global arena.
So you make a very good point about the surplus society that we live in. the social web gives us access to a huge market, but focusing in and zoning in a niche can create opportunities very quickly. So let's move on now to your radio show on Radio Kerry, Can't Kerry, and I know I'm saying it in the Ulster Irish, in my Donegal dialect. You also podcast this show.
I do. Now, I'm new to radio. I've only been doing it for 2 or 3 years. And I came on board with Radio Kerry day one as the presenter of this programme, which is an Irish language programme. And when I came on board, it wasn't being podcast. It went out once a week. And I would say it had a very limited listenership because it's up against the behemoth that is Radio na Gaeltachta, which is fantastic. And it's amazing that in the Gaeltach areas we have a national broadcaster located, and that's amazing and it's great for the area. But if you're trying to cultivate an online show and you're going up against a station, you know, your listenership isn't going to be all that strong, or it's going to be difficult to be visible. So I asked our in-house social media team, would it be possible to podcast it? And they said yes. And immediately I started getting feedback. I started getting emails from the Irish Centre in Manchester. I got a lot of feedback on Twitter from people who are interested in Irish. And suddenly I realised that trying to fight the battle of gaining listenership in the traditional sense could be greatly enhanced by having an online presence, and then maybe broadening the topics of conversation that are on the show, broadening them out from, we'll say, just local elements. Local elements are good, obviously, of course, because it's Caint Kerry, but that I could also talk about things that were happening in the north, or things that were happening in Dublin or in Connemara, or as the case may be. So a really, really local show, a small local show, is really now finding its feet with broader topics that people from many different areas can listen to via podcast online.
So you're cultivating two different audiences. You're building your on-air audience, but you're also building an online community. And again, another great example of going niche. But what did you find when you looked at the data behind your podcast and where your audiences were coming from?
The audiences, data-wise, are coming from, again, Dublin, the United States and the UK. I feel that the local online audience is more difficult to cultivate because obviously they can get it in the more traditional capacity. But as people are becoming more familiar with online, then they're going to be using their iPads, they're going to be going into iTunes, they're going to be subscribing. And I'm getting more of that type of local feedback now. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to split the show. Obviously, the show on air is longer. It's an hour long, and there's going to be music and things like that in it also, whereas the podcast is shorter, and I'll split up the podcast into their separate topics. So I still have a very local listenership on air in the traditional capacity, and then my online listenership is more national in that capacity. And also, like I said, on the East Coast of the United States, I get emails from people, I get feedback saying that they really love to tune in, and they can listen at their pleasure. This is the other element of it, of course. You don't have to tune in at a specific time. You can tune in whenever you want when it's on podcast. So it really is at its infancy stage yet. It's very niche. Obviously, it's Irish language. Obviously, it only relates to people who speak Irish. But at the same time, it would suggest to me that there's definitely a market for online, more general topics that will suit more people, that more people are interested in, but also then the local market can be satisfied too by doing a longer show in the traditional on-air capacity.
And when we sit behind a mic, whether it's in radio or recording a podcast, people don't see us. However, we can also leverage social media, and you also do that very well, don't you? Particularly through Facebook and Twitter.
I do. I was very lucky because when I started Dingle News, I also started the Dingle News page. Now, you understand yourself, Joanne, that when you're working for an organisation, you have to be obviously very respectful of the organisation you work for. So I'm not actually doing my website at the moment like I was because I'm working in News and Radio Kerry, and that's where all of my efforts in the news capacity go at the moment. But I've been able to keep up the online presence, and the page has a very, very good reach and something in the region of 20,000 followers. And when I podcast my Caint Kerry show, I will also share it on there. I'll share it on Twitter. And Instagram has been quite good for me as well. What I do is I was also a photographer when I was working in news and I was working with newspapers. So what I find very good is I will post a video, or excuse me, I'll post a photograph, and that will get people to interact, and that will get people to go to the show as well. And then in more recent times, when I have a guest in studio, like musicians, I will record them, I will do a short video, and I'll put that on Facebook too. So in that way, again, you're bringing more people to the podcast. I suppose the challenge at the moment for me is how to promote the place the podcast is, in terms of, well, you can subscribe on iTunes. You can also go to the website, and there's also various apps, of course, like Stitcher, etc. So what I'm trying to really work out at the moment is the best place to direct people to, and that is, I suppose, the challenge that we're trying to deal with at the moment.
Well, funny you should mention that, because I believe I have an answer to that question later on in the show, so you're going to have to listen back to the full episode.
Fantastic. I'll be tuned, all ears for sure.
So finally, Marian, if somebody approached you and they were going to go niche and build an online brand or an online business, what tips would you give them? What have you learned along the way by following your niche? And I guess it's also your passion.
I would say to have a look online first at keywords. You'd be surprised what people are searching for, even in a niche capacity. And I found that geographical niche words that related to the area that I live in were really helpful. So if I wanted to put a story out there, if I could just put a simple hashtag dingle or whatever, that is going to make that story travel further. I would also say have a look at what other keywords relate to your topics. You can also put in, for example, hashtag Gaeilge. That's going to, if your Irish language, if your thing is in Irish language, that is going to bring that to new people as well. Keywords are very important. They are going to help you, and they're going to help you get ahead of the game. Just listen to people as well, because we talk a lot about online media, but just if people are emailing you, if people are talking to you, it's very important to have your ear to the ground as well, because ear to the ground does contribute to social media. Social media often can be moving at a very quick pace, but at the end of the day, it's people that are behind it. And I was able to listen to what people wanted, give them that online, and that helped it go even further. And finally, I would say, don't be afraid to go really niche. Don't feel that you have to service everybody. If you do one thing really, really well, people will keep coming back from that. And what I found with the show I'm doing now, which is niche, and also with the website, which I had before, which was very niche, I really went into the devil is in the detail. And if people are happy with that, they're going to keep coming back to you. So don't try to be everything to every person. Do one thing really well, and people are going to keep coming back for that.
Excellent advice, Marian. Now, one thing that we didn't touch on is how you commercialise and make money from your online presence. But I'm going to hold that because that's going to be the topic for another show. I will have links to all Marian's social networks and also to the show Kerry on the blog post associated with this podcast. Marian, thank you so much for joining me from Kerry, and have a great day.
Thank you, Joanne, and you too.
Shoutouts.
In this part of the show, I give shout-outs to brands, organisations or individuals whose work online is remarkable and worth talking about. In this week's show, I'm sharing 3 online businesses which are worth studying in terms of their niche marketing.
1.
UK-based Robert Lilly is a health commentator that has amassed a massive online following and also influence. He runs the hashtag Health Chats and, in fact, takes those chats offline and on the road. I attended one recently in Dublin, his very first live Irish health chat, and he will soon be a guest of this podcast. Roy built up his first enterprise from scratch, turning it into a multi-million-pound turnover business. His position as a former chair of the NHS Trust and as a commentator and analyst of healthcare policy has contributed to his unparalleled reach over social media in the NHS. You can follow Roy on Twitter at Roy Lilly.
2.
One of my favourite law enforcement and social media influencers is US-based Laurie Stevens. She, in my own mind, is the original LESM commentator. Laurie wrote the foreword for my book, Social Media Under Investigation, Law Enforcement and the Social Web, and she's also the organiser of the Smile Conference, at which I spoke in 2015 in Phoenix, Arizona. Her consulting company, Laws Communications, has been providing communications consultation to law enforcement since 2005. Lawscom provides excellent service and support exclusively to the law enforcement community. She also produces the internationally known and distinguished Connected Cops blog and the notably prominent Connected Cops Awards.
3.
Irish-based Samantha Kelly is the founder of the Women's Inspire Network, which is a community of 7,000 women in business from across the globe. Samantha, along with Helena Gilhooly, run the Women's Inspire Network, which started out on Twitter as a hashtag Women's Inspire, and they then moved to a very popular Facebook group. The community has grown into a membership site. They host live events as well as multiple Facebook Lives. Samantha has also been revealed as one of the speakers at next year's Social Media Marketing World in San Diego, organised by Social Media Examiner. Find out more at women'sinspirenetwork.com.
Ask JSB.
Ask JSB brings the voices of my listeners onto the show. I'm always hunting for new ideas for my podcast, my blog, and my vlog. And I find the best inspiration comes from questions from my community. If you have a digital marketing or social media question relating to any niche, simply log on to my website, digitaltraining.ie, and click on Ask JSB. I'll get your question as an MP3 file into my inbox. Alternatively, you can record a short audio message on your smartphone and email it to joanne@digitaltraining.ie. In this episode, Marian, who joined me on today's show as my guest interviewee, has a question for me about promoting your podcast.
Hi Joanne, my name is Marian. I work for Radio Kerry, and my query relates to what is the best platform to promote your podcast on? If you're tweeting a link to a podcast, should you tweet it back to, say, the organic website where it is, or where should you actually tweet a link to iTunes or Stitcher, or is there some way to kind of combine all of those together to get the most out of it in terms of reach and in terms of how many people encounter and experience your podcast?
Thanks for your question, Marian. There is no single or correct answer to your question, in fact. In terms of promoting your niche podcast, here are my top tips. You should always drive traffic back to your website where possible. This is one of the biggest advantages of social media. I embed my podcast in a dedicated blog post on my website 3 times at the beginning, the middle, and at the end with the full show notes. I also share links to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. The reason I do this is because I understand that there are different audiences using different platforms. I can't choose my favourite. I also have JSB Talks Digital listed on Libsyn, the world's largest podcast network, to help me get greater reach. I also share the weekly show with my own email list on a Tuesday. And I also recommend having a social sharing schedule to promote your latest but also your older podcasts. For example, I share my latest podcast 4 times in 24 hours on Twitter and once on the other social networks, with 4 more tweets in the next 7 days. It will also be shared again as part of my ongoing social media calendar. I hope this helps. The big takeaway here is always use your podcast to drive traffic back to your website and serve your content on multiple platforms to target your audiences.
JSB's column.
In today's column, I'm sharing my digital transformation segue into the public sector. I've been in business for 9 years, and I have to say it was this year when I finally got crystal clear on my business and my niche. Heretofore, I was working with all sorts of clients on all sorts of projects and with all sorts of budgets. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with this, but I felt like I was always jumping from Billy to Jack. This is a good old Irish phrase. 2017 is the year I got focus. This is the year I had my own digital transformation with my segue into the public sector. As many of you will know, I am currently developing my suite of online knowledge products, a membership site, and I'm writing my second book. All of this is happening with one niche in mind: marketing and communications professionals in the public sector. Trust me, I've very often fallen into the trap of being so broad for fear that I won't get enough traction. However, as I know only too well, this is a bad strategy. Being niche online will help you carve out a space for you, help your customers find you more easily, and help you position yourself as an expert. So, this year, my book, my signature talk, my 8 courses, and my membership site will be dedicated to digital transformation in the public sector. And it's quite an exciting prospect, if I'm honest. According to Chris Anderson, increasingly, the mass marketing is turning into a mass of niches. Being niche is important, but here's what you need to do to make it work for you online. Understand your audience and their needs. Focus on them while building your brand, as they are the voice of reason before you start creating something that fails. Engage with your audience. Nobody wants to be spoken to. They want a conversation with you. So once you find your audience, spark up that conversation and keep it going. You know that social and email marketing, as well as great content marketing, will help you here. There has never been an easier time to engage with your customers, live and in real time. Leverage social media metrics and tools. There is so much data out there to help you establish more facts about your niche, but reading and understanding that data can be tricky. If this is not your skill set, then hire somebody who loves data. It will pay off. Create a customer strategy in line with your brand strategy. Acting, saying, and doing according to your customers' needs will also bring rewards. You need to be congruent in your own work and commentary online, which matches the service or product you're providing to your customers. And finally, be visible. Nobody wants to hear from you if they haven't heard of you. You need a deep digital footprint, a dynamic social presence, and a strong position in your niche to succeed. Work as hard on your own marketing as much as your customer marketing. If you want to discuss building an online brand in a niche area, then get in touch. Simply drop me an email to joanne@digitaltraining.ie.
Social media tool of the week.
The social media tool that saved my working week this week is Sales Navigator from LinkedIn. It's helping me find, understand, and engage with marketing and communications professionals in the public sector. It's a paid premium feature from LinkedIn, but it is really valuable for me to build my online business as I want to connect with the right people. Some of the features include advanced lead and company search. You can find the right people and companies with a search experience that delivers the most relevant prospects. Lead recommendations. You can also integrate with your CRM. You'll also get real-time sales updates, so you get relevant insights on your accounts and leads, including job changes. Notes and tags is a really nice feature. You can organise your leads and accounts with tags and take notes that can be synced back to your CRM. You can also view who's viewed your profile. We all love this feature. View the expanded list of who's viewed your profile in the last 90 days. You can find out more at business.linkedin.com/sales-solutions/sales-navigator. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of JSB Talks Digital. Being in studio is my favourite hour of the week, so I always appreciate the time you take to listen to my shows. To ensure you never miss a show, please subscribe on your smartphone, on iTunes, Stitcher, or on SoundCloud. We're now also listed on Libsyn, the podcast network. If you're a regular listener, I'd love if you could take a few minutes to post a review on your podcast platform of choice. As always, I have everything discussed on today's show on my blog at digitaltraining.ie. I'm Joanne Sweeney Burke. This is JSB Talks Digital. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.
JSB Talks Digital.